The night was a held breath over the city when the static hit like shrapnel. Lamps trembled on their filaments, and screens flashed a sickly blue. Mara Qureshi steadied her coffee and froze. A voice cut through the noise. It said they're already here. Her apartment seemed to tilt. The hallway groaned as if the building remembered earthquakes. Mara's pulse drummed like boots in a stairwell. She whispered to no one, "This is a test." The radio answered with a rising hum that felt like teeth grinding glass. Across town sirens woke, thin and frantic. A neighbor pounded on a door. A child cried. The voice returned, closer now, and each word felt carved in ice. It said, "We've been waiting for you." Mara stepped toward the window, and the streetlights stuttered. She saw shapes in the fog, not bodies but intentions. The city swallowed a breath. Mara Qureshi said, "Who is we?" The apartment answered with a bloom of silent light. Nothing would be ordinary again. The voice did not fade. It nested in the wiring, and hummed like a distant engine. Mara traced the sound as if it were a seam in reality. She unplugged the radio, yet the whisper persisted. Officer Hamid shouted downstairs, "Stay inside." Tires hissed on wet asphalt, and then stopped. The city leaned toward every antenna like tall grass to wind. Mara felt the message sink into bones that knew old grief. She thought of a hospital corridor and a door that never opened again. The memory arrived with the voice, as if summoned. It said, "All lines converge." Mara Qureshi said, "On me." She stepped to her cramped map wall and fixed a pin on a station tower she had monitored for months. Somewhere in the air, the frequency rose like dawn. Dishes on rooftops tilted. In apartments across the block, lights went thin. The building seemed to listen. Something answered from the fog with a slow, deliberate pulse. The alerts multiplied until the phone stalled. A civil broadcast cut in and stuttered. A man tried to sound calm and failed. He said, "Please remain indoors." The message crumpled under the weight of static. Mara opened her laptop and watched unlisted streams bloom like bruises. A waveform crawled across the screen. It was not random. It was a signature, looping in spirals like handwriting she almost recognized. A private chat pinged from an old contact. Noor typed, "You hearing this?" Mara Qureshi typed, "It knows me." The building shook as a helicopter skimmed low, rotors chopping the fog. A panel van braked hard below. The stairwell took on a new gravity. The alien tone rose again and threaded a phrase. It said, "We arrive by design." Mara whispered, "Whose design?" She felt the choice harden like cooling metal. She saved the waveform to a drive that hummed too loudly in the quiet. Outside, the neighborhood formed a chorus of uncertain courage. Windows cracked open like questions. Officer Hamid paced under the awning and scanned the rooftops. He said, "Units, report grid integrity." The reply dissolved mid-syllable. A hummingbird drone slipped through the rain and perched on a cable like a cold coin. Mara watched it align with the dish across the street. The signal shifted, triangulated, then locked. She remembered late-night notes about clandestine relays, and the acronym no one would explain. She said, "They built you a path." The drone blinked green. The voice steadied and threaded her name with unnatural care. It said, "Mara Qureshi." She closed her eyes and every loss became a coordinate. She was not chosen. She was catalogued. The thought scraped like tin. The fog brightened as if backlit by a buried moon. Somewhere a breaker snapped, and the block fell into an obedient hush. The voice arrived clean, as if the world had been tuned. It pressed its weight onto the room with the courtesy of a verdict. It said, "We've been waiting for you." The sentence bent time inside the walls. A child's cry stopped mid-note. Even the rain paused between beats. Mara did not move. She let the words settle where her fear lived. She remembered a transmitter in a guarded warehouse and a file that vanished before sunrise. Officer Hamid looked up at her window and raised a hand she could not read. Noor typed again, "Do not answer." The radio warmed in her palm without power. She said, "What are you?" The light receded, leaving edges too sharp to ignore. The city exhaled and sirens resumed, less certain now. The voice did not repeat itself. It did not need to. "Mara," Qureshi said, "then hear me." The apartment became a stage for a decision that would not forgive hesitation. Mara Qureshi woke to a pounding on her door. The clock read 4:12 a.m., but the night hadn't changed. Noor stood in the hallway, rain dripping from her coat, eyes scanning like searchlights. She said, "They're in the relay stations already." Mara's chest tightened. Noor handed her a folded schematic, edges damp and ink bleeding. Lines marked corridors under the city, arteries no one admitted existed. Mara asked, "Who gave you this?" Noor's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell, measured and deliberate. The building's hum deepened like a slow drumbeat. Mara pulled Noor inside, bolted the door, and laid the schematic across the table. The voice returned in a whisper that only Mara seemed to hear. "They've been here longer than you." The words coiled through her spine. She traced the schematic's lines with a finger, and felt the map pulse faintly under her touch, as if alive. Noor pointed to a section of the map where 3 lines intersected. "This is where they listen," she whispered. Mara leaned closer, noticing a handwritten note in red, "Subject 17, active." Her gut knew it was her. A faint vibration tremored through the floorboards, traveling up through her chair. Outside, a van idled too long. She moved to the window, and the driver's face was half shadow, half smile. Noor gripped her arm. "You can't let them track you," she said. The radio hissed again, unpowered, its casing warm. The voice spoke one word: "Decide." Mara's throat was dry. She turned back to Noor, but her friend was already pulling cables from her bag, setting up a jammer with steady, shaking hands. The night felt too small for the choices pressing in. The jammer powered on with a low thrum. Static danced along the edges of perception, making the air feel thicker. Mara imagined the signal lines bending, breaking, snarling. Noor said, "We've got 6 minutes before they triangulate this disruption." The hum in the floorboards grew louder, almost a heartbeat. Mara spread more maps, each showing deeper layers, abandoned stations, sealed vaults. "These weren't built for us," she murmured. Noor's eyes flicked toward her. "No," she said, "they built them for themselves." A shiver ran through Mara's arms, the same way it had in a hospital hallway years ago, when Truth had walked toward her in a white coat. The voice returned, faint but clear. "You're not the first." The stairwell door below groaned open. Boots echoed on concrete, unhurried. Noor began packing, movements precise but fast. Mara reached for the drive containing the waveform. She slid it into her pocket as the voice cut in with a question sharp enough to wound. "Will you betray your own?" Her pulse spiked. The boots stopped on the floor below. A knock came, slow and deliberate. Mara moved to the light switch, killing the glow. In the sudden dark, the jammer's faint hum seemed deafening. Noor whispered, "They're not here for me." Mara gripped the radio like a talisman. The knocking stopped. Silence expanded until the city's distant hum seeped back in. Noor met Mara's eyes and gave the smallest nod toward the fire escape. They moved as one, silent over warped floorboards. Outside, the metal was slick with rain, breath visible in the chill. From here, the streets were pools of reflection, each lamplight trembling in the water. The van was still there, but the driver was gone. A shadow passed under a distant awning, too fast to be human, too smooth to be machine. Mara's fingers brushed the schematic in her pocket. It pulsed once. She whispered, "This is bigger than we thought." Noor's reply was lost in the next roll of thunder. The rain eased as dawn approached, but the streets stayed empty. Mara, Qureshi, and Noor moved through the back alleys. the schematic guiding them like a secret compass. The relay station loomed ahead, disguised as an abandoned textile warehouse. Noor said, "They've been hiding in plain sight." Mara's stomach knotted as she saw fresh tire tracks in the mud, too recent to ignore. They slipped inside through a rusted side door, the air thick with dust and the faint metallic tang of ozone. Rows of dormant looms lined the floor, shadows stretching between them like traps. In the far corner, a steel hatch was bolted shut, the schematics lines ending exactly there. The radio in Mara's pocket vibrated once without sound. She touched it and felt the weight of every unanswered question pressing down. Noor whispered, "Whatever's down there, it's still awake." Mara approached the steel hatch, her breath loud in the stagnant air. The bolts were new, gleaming against the rust. Noor crouched beside her, running fingers along the cold metal. "This wasn't sealed from neglect," she said. A faint hum seeped through the hatch, steady and low, like the heartbeat of something vast. Mara pressed her ear against it, and a voice surfaced, not from the radio but from the steel itself. It whispered her name in perfect clarity. She jerked back, eyes wide. Noor reached for her bag, producing a small cutting torch. "We have 2 minutes before the power surge alerts them," she said. Mara gripped the schematic, knowing that opening this hatch would strip away the last illusions she clung to. The torch hissed to life, casting violent shadows on the walls. The scent of burning metal mixed with the damp warehouse air. Noor's hands were steady, but her eyes darted to the windows with every flicker of movement outside. Mara kept her grip on the radio, listening for the voice. The hum beneath the hatch deepened, vibrating through her knees. A muffled clang echoed from somewhere below, too deliberate to be machinery. Mara whispered, "Someone knows we're here." Noor didn't stop cutting. "Then we finish before they arrive." Sparks rained down like fragments of a dying star. The last bolt gave way with a screech, and the hatch swung open to reveal a narrow stairwell plunging into darkness. A warm, unnatural light pulsed faintly from below, in sync with the hum. Mara hesitated at the top step, feeling the air shift as if she had crossed a threshold. Noor said, "After this, there's no going back." Mara's reply was a whisper, "We passed that point hours ago." They descended, each step creaking under their weight, the glow intensifying with every turn. The walls were lined with cables that pulsed like veins, carrying light deeper into the earth. At the bottom, the stairwell opened into a chamber, unlike anything Mara had seen. Banks of alien machinery curved into the walls, their surfaces smooth and seamless, glowing with shifting colors. In the center stood a figure, human in shape, but too still, too precise. Its eyes opened, reflecting the light in a way that pierced. The voice that had haunted Mara filled the space without sound, each word bypassing her ears and landing in her mind. "We've been writing your history." Noor froze beside her, breath caught. Mara took one step forward, her own reflection warping across the machine's surface. "Then, tell me why," she said. The chamber answered with a low, resonant hum. The humanoid figure stepped forward, its movements impossibly smooth, as if gravity were a suggestion. The chamber lights shifted to a deep crimson, shadows cutting across the alien machinery. "Mara," Qureshi's voice was steady, "you're not one of them." The figure tilted its head. "Not entirely," it said, each syllable resonating in bone rather than air. Noor tightened her grip on the flashlight. "Then who do you serve?" she demanded. The figure's gaze lingered on Mara. "I serve the architects of your reality." The hum in the walls deepened until the floor quivered. Mara's fingers found the silver pendant at her neck, gripping it as if it could anchor her to truth. The figure gestured to the walls, and sections of the metal dissolved into moving images, scenes from history, both familiar and subtly wrong. Wars fought for reasons that never existed. Leaders speaking words they never said. "Your history," the figure said. "It is an arrangement, a script approved by those you've never met." Noor's jaw clenched. Mara stepped closer to the shifting wall, watching her own face appear in grainy footage she'd never lived. The voice in her mind was colder now. "You are not an accident, Mara Qureshi. You are a continuation." The footage shifted to show her parents, younger, standing beside someone not human. Mara's breath caught as the image froze on her parents. The figure said, "Your bloodline is the key." They bound themselves to the architects generations ago. Noor took a sharp step back, the beam of her flashlight shivering against the walls. "This is why they're here," Mara murmured, half to herself. The hum grew louder, syncopated with her pulse. The pendant at her neck grew warm, almost hot. The figure's eyes glinted. It was never about invasion. It was about succession. Mara felt the floor tilt beneath her feet, though she knew it hadn't moved. Every memory suddenly felt curated. Noor whispered, "They made you part of their design." "Why tell me now?" Mara asked, her voice a low blade in the charged air. The figure's head inclined. "Because the others will arrive soon, and you must choose who inherits the truth." Noor's grip on Mara's arm was firm now. "We can leave, seal this, pretend we never." The figure cut her off. "You can't undo what you are." The chamber's light shifted again, this time to a piercing white, erasing all shadows. In that clarity, Mara saw that parts of the machinery were built from human materials: steel, copper, familiar weld lines. Humanity had been helping build this place. The betrayal settled heavy in her chest. The voice in Mara's mind was no longer the figures alone. It was layered, multiple, ancient. "We have shaped your path so you would stand here." Noor stepped between them, defiance burning in her eyes. "She owes you nothing." The chamber responded with a low, resonant chord that vibrated the walls. The figure looked past Noor, directly at Mara. "When the architects arrive, they will see you as theirs. What happens next depends on the choice you make in this moment." Mara closed her fist around the pendant, the metal biting into her skin. For the first time since the transmission began, she felt the faint spark of control. The chamber shook as a low-frequency pulse rippled through the ground, dust spilling from the cables above. Noor grabbed Mara's arm. "They're coming." The humanoid stepped aside, revealing a console embedded in the floor, its surface alive with shifting symbols. "You have two options," it said. "Activate the weapon and end them now, or transmit the truth to every mind on Earth." Mara stared at the console, heart pounding. The weapon's activation key pulsed red. The transmission sigil glowed white. Both paths felt irreversible. "What happens if I choose wrong?" she asked. "You won't know it until there's nothing left to save," the figure replied. Noor's grip tightened. "Choose the truth," she urged. The hum became a roar as the chamber's walls retracted, revealing a vast hangar of alien ships suspended above dark water. Their hulls shimmered with shifting camouflage, fading between visibility and shadow. Mara's breath caught. This wasn't a handful of invaders, it was an armada. The figure's voice pressed into her thoughts. "The architects will land in minutes." Noor pulled a small MP grenade from her coat. "We can cripple their relay long enough to get out." Mara shook her head. "That won't stop what's already in motion." She stepped closer to the console, feeling the warmth of the sigils on her skin. The red weapon sigil pulsed faster, syncing with Mara's racing pulse. Images flashed in her mind. Cities burning, oceans boiling, her parents' faces dissolving into static. The white sigil's glow felt calmer but heavier, like carrying the weight of the entire planet's grief. Noor's voice cracked. "If you send the truth, the world will collapse in panic. They'll tear each other apart." Mara looked at her friend, seeing fear mixed with trust. "If I destroy them, I become them," she said quietly. The humanoid's eyes glimmered. "All empires are built on a choice like this." The chamber's lights flickered as the first alien ship descended toward the water, its hull breaking the camouflage entirely. Engines emitted a deep, bone-shaking resonance. Mara closed her eyes, letting the roar and the hum merge into a single sound. Her hand hovered, trembling between the sigils. Noor whispered, "Please." Mara opened her eyes and slammed her palm down, not on the weapon, but on the transmission. The console flared white, flooding the chamber with light so bright it erased the alien ships from sight. Somewhere far above, the world began to change. The light faded to reveal the hangar empty, the water still and black. The ships were gone, not destroyed, but elsewhere. The figure regarded Mara with an unreadable expression. "You've given them the truth. Now they will decide what to do with it." Noor exhaled shakily, lowering her grenade. From far above, faint echoes of chaos reached the chamber, millions of minds awakening to a rewritten history in an instant. Mara stepped back from the console, feeling its warmth drain from her palm. "Then we face what comes next," she said. The pendant at her neck cooled, and for the first time she felt its weight as her own. Mara Qureshi emerged from the chamber into a dawn sky split by emergency broadcasts. Screens on every building flickered with fractured images, alien structures, secret meetings, altered histories. Noor pulled her hood up as crowds gathered in the streets, faces pale and searching. "They're seeing it," Noor said quietly. Sirens wailed, not for attack, but for unrest. Some cheered, others screamed. Mara looked at the faces around her and saw the same truth. Nothing would be hidden again. The pendant felt heavy against her collarbone. A man in the crowd shouted, "Is it true?" Mara didn't answer. The question would echo long after she left. Across the city, police lines fractured as officers argued with their own commanders. Broadcasts showed proof of decades-long manipulation, names of human collaborators scrolling in red. Noor watched from an alley as two groups clashed in the street, neighbors now enemies. "You gave them the truth," she said. "But you also gave them a weapon." Mara's hands curled into fists. "It was never going to be clean," she replied. Overhead, drones drifted aimlessly, their signals broken. In the chaos, a familiar hum touched her thoughts. The architects had not left. They were watching. The hum grew sharper, drawing Mara toward the waterfront. The old harbor was crowded with people staring at something in the mist. Noor pushed through with her, the crowd parting in uneasy silence. A shape emerged, one of the alien ships, motionless above the water, its camouflage gone. A voice, not spoken but shared in every mind present, said, "You are awake now." The ship's hull shimmered with images from the transmission, repeating the truth in endless loops. Mara felt every gaze turned toward her, though no one had been told her name. Panic rippled through the crowd as smaller craft detached from the main ship, descending like falling stars. Noor pulled Mara back toward the pier. "They're making contact," she said, breathless. But the smaller craft didn't attack. They landed quietly, doors hissing open to reveal nothing inside. The voice spoke again, "Choose your envoys." People hesitated, looking to one another, then at Mara. The choice was being forced into her hands again. Her pulse quickened. Noor whispered, "You can't go." Mara's eyes stayed locked on the nearest craft. "I think I already did." Mara stepped forward, the crowd's noise fading to a low hum. Each step toward the craft felt heavier, as though the air itself resisted her. The pendant pulsed faintly against her skin, matching the ship's soft glow. Noor called after her, voice breaking, but didn't follow. At the open hatch, the air was colder, carrying a metallic tang. The voice in her mind was clear now. "Your role is only beginning." She looked back once, seeing Noor's face in the shifting light, then stepped inside. The hatch closed without a sound, and the craft rose into the mist, leaving the pier in stunned silence. The craft's interior was silent, except for the faint hum under Mara Qureshi's feet. Walls shifted like liquid metal, reshaping to fit her presence. A viewport opened, revealing the earth below, its continents edged in faint, shimmering grids. The voice spoke softly, as though to comfort. "You see the map as it truly is." Mara's breath caught. Every city glowed with threads of connection, some vibrant, others dimmed. Noor's face flickered in her memory, standing on the pier. Mara whispered, "What do you want from me?" The voice replied, "To decide who wakes next." The grids shifted, showing faces, millions of them, hovering in translucent panels. Some looked terrified, others defiant, many unaware. "These are the ones who can hear you," the voice said. Mara's fingers hovered over the nearest panel, her reflection warped across its surface. She saw her parents' faces appear again, this time younger, their eyes meeting hers. Noor's image flickered beside them, alive, watching. The voice pressed in. "They will follow the one they believe is truth." Mara's chest ached under the weight of their gaze. Outside the craft, Earth rotated slowly, clouds swirling over familiar coastlines. Mara touched a panel, and the image expanded into a memory, not hers, but perfectly real. A group of people huddled underground, listening to a signal. The memory shifted to show alien and human hands working together over a blueprint. "Your history is a shared authorship," the voice said. Mara stepped back, heart pounding. "And the next chapter?" The voice was quiet for a long moment before answering, "That is why you are here." The panels dissolved, replaced by a single, immense door at the far end of the chamber. It pulsed with a deep golden light, each beat resonating through the floor. "Beyond this," the voice said, "are the architects?" Mara felt the pull. Fear and inevitability braided together. Noor's voice echoed in her memory, "You can't go." She stepped forward, the sound of her boots swallowed by the hum. The door brightened as she approached, casting her shadow long across the floor. Mara stopped at the threshold. The golden light washed over her face, erasing the shadows. The voice spoke one last time. "Once you enter, the world you left will no longer be the same to you." She thought of the streets of Noor, of the people staring at alien ships in the mist. The hum deepened, and the door began to open, not swinging, but unfolding like a flower of metal and light. Mara stepped inside without looking back. The frame lingered on the empty doorway, golden light spilling into the silent chamber.